Thank you. All right, so as Beth so graciously already mentioned, my name is Dr. Kat. I've come here today to talk to you a little bit about nutrition. So we have an hour. Is that the plan? How long is the talk? Okay. So I'm going to get into a few nitty-gritty detail kinds of things just because I don't feel like I would do justice to the information otherwise. But I don't mean to overwhelm anybody, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I'd be happy to stop and clarify anything. Also, just remember, this is a lot of information to take in. There are papers over there, one with a resource sheet and another one that has, it's a pamphlet I made several years ago. It's called Heartbeat Eats, and it's about the Mediterranean diet, which we're going to get a little into today. So you have some references there. And I will try to give a synopsis at the end. But again, like I said, we are going to get into a few details as far as nutrition goes. So why should we even bother with paying attention to our nutrition? There are a lot of reasons that we should be very conscious and aware of what we're putting into our bodies, how we're doing it, and how we feel about it. So, of course, number one deal is our overall nutritional status. If we're not eating high nutrient foods, we're not getting nutrients into our bodies, and we're not going to be able to perform our basic physiological processes that need to happen every day. The liver is our main detox organ, and it requires a lot of vitamins and minerals to be able to do its job, along with proteins, amino acids, and several other cofactors. So we are meant to get all of those things. We have, for thousands of years, been able to accomplish getting all of those things through eating. Inflammatory status is very much affected by what kinds of foods and what qualities of foods that we're eating, and we'll get into a lot of details about that and how to choose the best kinds of foods that promote anti-inflammatory responses in your tissues and deal with any inflammation that you might already have. If you choose to go with your standard American diet, which is very interesting, it's shortened to capital SAD, which is SAD, and it is a very sad diet. You are going to be pro-inflammatory, and these things end up causing chronic diseases down the line. If you continuously are giving your body poor quality nutrition, you do increase your risk for things like diabetes, cancer, stroke, high cholesterol, cardiac events, all of the fun stuff that we really can be avoiding. Hormonal influences, the foods that we eat are used to make our hormones. Not only that, but they're used to feed the bugs in our gut, which affect our hormones. And they can either stress us out on the physical or mental level and cause other hormones to be secreted or not. So there's a multidimensional layer or level of how foods can affect your hormone balances. And we do have I have a lot of patients who come in with the main complaint of hormonally related issues. Heart health, I kind of touched on that. Eating the right way does reduce your risk of cardiac events like a heart attack, chest pain, and all of that. Your probiotic balance is very important, and it is absolutely affected by what foods you're eating. That's basically, it's their food before it becomes ours. They touch it before our bodies absorb it. And how we look and feel is really important, and really what it comes down to. When we're eating right for our bodies, we're going to feel better, we're going to look better, our hair is going to grow better, our nails are going to be strong and clear. You're not going to have any white marks or peeling or soft spots. There are not going to be any ridges in your nails. Your skin will be glowing and look much healthier than if you're eating a poor diet. So, where do we start? I have kind of divided this up into three factors because nutrition is, again, very multidimensional, and it's not just what we're eating, but it's also how we're eating and how we're preparing what we're eating and how we're storing what we're eating. All of these things affect the quality of the food that we end up consuming. So we're going to talk a little bit about kitchenware. Do you have things that are putting extra chemicals into your body just because of what you're choosing to cook in? Are you optimizing the best amount of nutrients in how you're cooking, or are they kind of getting fried off or creating inflammatory components that wouldn't have been there if you had prepared it in a different way. Food choices and preparation. So food choices, we're going to really get into what our latest research is saying in what's best broadly speaking for the entire population, but then I'm also going to mention a few ways to individualize and make a more unique choice catered to what's going on for you. And mood and timing makes a really big difference too. When you're cranky, you're not going to digest as well as when you're feeling really good and really grateful for what's in front of you. So, kitchenware and containers. When we're cooking, we want to avoid things like aluminum, Teflon, and this PFC or PFAs. These are polyfluoroalkyl agents or polyfluoral chemicals that are in a lot of actual like fire retardant things. So we are getting exposed in our environment as well, but we're finding it's in cooking containers, and it's actually something that can be in Teflon and other cooking devices that actually will leach into our foods, and these are dangerous. They affect your fertility. I actually have a handout in the resources. It's listed, yes, the Dirty Dozen endocrine disruptors. These guys basically affect our hormones, they affect our fertility, they affect how we're able to fight against cancer and protect ourselves. We don't have a lot of information at this point. We basically made these chemicals, thought they were great, started mass producing them, and now we're like, oh no, they don't break down in the environment, they're in everybody's bodies. We don't really know all of the things that they're doing, but we know that they're doing these destructive things already. So this is something where you can speak with your money. First of all, I believe that as consumers, we have a very awesome power in being able to tell these bigger companies what we want and how we're going to live our lives. And by buying things that resonate with our environmental safety, our personal safety, will only help the markets ride and pay attention to those kinds of facts instead of looking for what's the easiest way to cook something or what's the shiniest pan or most nonstick pan. So instead of these things, what we want to use are stainless steel, copper-based pans, cast iron. There are silicone-based baking sheets that are safe, and ceramic. Same thing, cooking utensils. Plastics also can be endocrine disruptors. And what we want to be using instead are natural products like wood or something like stainless steel that's not going to leach any sort of molecules into your food or elsewhere. There are some kitchen devices that I think are excellent or very helpful in helping people have a healthy whole food-based diet. It cuts down on preparation time. They also tend to optimize your nutrients when you're cooking. And those are things like the Instant Pot, which I love. I have one myself, and it's a lifesaver. Dehydrator, blenders, food processor, a juicer would be great too for the summertime. Chopping, peeling, and slicing devices for your veggies. It'll make it that much easier. I know that there's a lot of resistance sometimes just like thinking about the big job of preparing things, and Whole Foods is making a killing by selling people pre-chopped veggies because it is something that really does, it's a mental block for preparing food sometimes. So storage should always be in non-plastics. Again, we're thinking about endocrine disruptors that can leach into our foods. So glass, beeswax, and cotton, stainless steel and ceramic are all great. We don't want the saran wrap that also has those PFAs in them. And not only that, but we use plastic wrap one time and we throw it out, and then it's just hanging out in our environment for a really, really long time. So this goes for your store packaging too. There's a lot of endocrine disruptors still in these things. Plastics that say BPA free are promising, but at the same time, we don't know what they're replacing it with, and we might find out in 10 years from now that that's a problem as well. So again, glass, papers, conscious packaging, pay attention to what your food's coming in even from the grocery store. So that being said, what kinds of foods should we be choosing? We want whole foods that are minimally processed because, of course, there are going to be less chemical additives in there. A lot of the references that I have are from the Environmental Workers Group. They have a website called ewg.org, and they have a lot of information for consumers if you go to consumer guides. They will tell you basically all of this information, and they'll give you the rundown and the research behind why we should avoid certain things, why we can choose certain things. It will tell you how to choose your fish. It will give you your clean 15 dirty dozen list, which we're going to get into. It even goes and tells us about different sunscreens and where those are kind of also affecting ourselves and our environment in negative ways, and how to choose the right kinds of sunscreens to help. So it's an excellent resource all in all. And they do a lot of research, and they're constantly updating their information. So it's an excellent place to just constantly be looking into. Yes?
Can you just repeat that source?
Sure. Environmental Workers Group. It's EWG.org. And again, there's a handout if you want to grab one with references. I may not have printed out enough. I'm not sure. So seasonal and local is what you want to do whenever possible. When the fruits and vegetables are in season, we're getting things that are not as processed to keep them fresh longer. They're coming to the stores a lot faster. They're not hanging out in storage prior to that, and that gives you more nutrients. The longer that something is hanging out on the shelves, it just slowly starts oxidizing and losing its nutritious value, especially the vitamins. The minerals, not so much, they kind of stick around, but all of the antioxidants and the vitamins that are very important to have on a daily basis do get depleted as time goes on. So I like to support our local farm stands, our local farmers markets. There are some winter farmers markets out there as well. There are different kinds of co-ops where you can get vegetables delivered to your door every 2 weeks or every week if you'd like, all just fresh stuff that's coming in on season. And that's an excellent way to get all of the nutrients and also be working with our environment that we're living in. So there is an added energetic benefit to it when you eat that way. So the Clean 15 Dirty Dozen is basically a list that shows us, because organic is really expensive, but it also is truly safer for us to be eating. There are still pesticides used in organic foods, but they are highly regulated compared to conventional fruits and vegetables and produce, where they can be genetically modified, they can have tons of different pesticides on them or within them, and they have a lot less regulation as far as chemical control goes. So again, when you're buying these conventional foods, you're supporting a lot of different toxins that are getting put into our environment, put into our soils, that eventually drain and leach into our water and deplete the soils as they go as well. So they're also doing that to our bodies. When we have pesticides, our bodies require extra nutrients to be able to detoxify them from our bodies. So if we're eating something that's kind of toxic already with less nutrient value, we're not going to be able to push those toxins out of our body as effectively as if we're eating cleaner foods that have higher nutritional value. Then whatever toxins you might be getting elsewhere, your body can handle much better. So I mentioned the GMO, genetically modified organisms. This is something that is a big problem. These foods are usually saturated in Roundup, which is rich in glyphosate, which is a chemical toxin that is also associated with cancer and reproductive issues. It's very popular and common to be using genetically modified organisms. There is argument that it is helping feed more people, but as we really go through the truth of that, it doesn't seem to be the case. It just seems to be really throwing off our environment and increasing overall cancer and some soil devastation while they're at it. So dairy, if you are somebody who has dairy, the type of dairy that you want to have should be grass-fed, and it should be whole fat. We need fats in our diet, and I'm going to talk about that a little further down the line. But fats are very important for healthy aging, for feeling good, for healthy metabolism. And the grass-fed, any sort of grass-fed cow product is going to be superior to grain-fed. God made cows with 4 chambers in their stomach, or 4 stomachs really, to chew cud and process grass. When they eat grains, their body's not used to that, and they're not meant to be eating them. And a very similar thing to when we eat GMO foods happens to them. They're eating genetically modified corn oftentimes, so they're getting a double hit of the extra toxins and the nutrient depletion on top of the fact that because they're eating a base of grain instead of they're basically having grass like a salad, the fats that are in their body are more pro-inflammatory than when they're eating that salad grass that they're meant to have. They actually make anti-inflammatory fats in all of their milk, any secretions, any flesh. I know it sounds horrible, but that's what it is. Grass-fed is the way to go because it will confer some protection. The poor things that we hear about red meat and the association between red meat and colon cancer is red meat that was grain-fed, and it's because of the inflammatory components in there that we have that effect. So it's not something to ignore. So, and again, you do need the fat. So lean cuts of meat aren't going to help you lose weight. You need healthy fats. So getting 85% for your ground beef would be actually nicer than getting the lesser percentages of fat that can be offered. So poultry and eggs, very similar idea. You want them to be as close to their natural environment as possible. So as much as they can be out there free range, eating bugs, eating different herbs and grasses and plants that they find, they're going to have a lot more nutritional value that's anti-inflammatory for you and more minerals from the green earth that they're eating than if they're in a just stock kind of poultry farm eating grains all day. Another thing that I wanted to touch on that is still nutrition is our qualities of liquids that we're taking in. Water is the primary liquid that we do take in, and we also cook in water. When I cook in water, I always use filtered water. When I'm rinsing my grains or soaking nuts and all of that, I'm using filtered water. Tap water can contain many contaminants, and that's another thing that's in that endocrine disruptors packet I handed along to look at. And you can find that online at ewg.org as well. But it can have heavy metals. There are pharmaceutical metabolites in there from people taking their prescriptions, going to the bathroom, having it go through the water filtration systems, and not all of it actually leaves. They also are finding antibiotic byproducts in our soil. So it's just like widespread craziness that we can't really get away from. So what we need to do is take extra measures. There are also infectors. It's less common here than other places like third world countries, of course, but there are still cases of amoebas and viral infections from tap water in North America. And again, endocrine disruptors, I just listed a few more that can be found in our water. Atrazine, perchlorates, and others. As far as heavy metals go, Connecticut tends to be higher in arsenic levels than others, and we don't really regulate that well here. So I use a Berkey filter. It is a little more on the expensive side. I was willing to invest with what I understand and know. There are all different options ranging from, you know, a Brita filter you can pick up at Target or Walmart, and you can get even fancier than the Berkey. I did leave a resource for you to peruse on your own time through ewg.org, again, different kinds of water filters and what they can offer for you for different price ranges. And in our drinks, there's a lot of times there's extra carbs and sugars in there that my patients kind of disregard or don't pay attention to. And so this is a conversation that I tend to have a lot, is to, if you are getting a soft drink, or if it says sugar-free and you think you're saving your body there, you really still need to make sure. Look at how much sugar is in there, and if it's not a sugar, look at what the replacement is, because there are safe replacements and there are dangerous replacements. Aspartame is a dangerous replacement. Stevia is generally recognized as safe at this point, and there's actually been some research that suggests that stevia might be able to help treat Lyme infections. So that's interesting and still up and coming, but it is derived from a natural plant. Erythritol and other sugar alcohols, usually they all end in the OL. They can cause gas and bloating, they can cause some GI complaints, but they're not as dangerous as the aspartame. And again, you want to choose drinks that are stored in glass containers as opposed to plastics. If they're hanging out in plastics, especially the teas, I always wonder, are they putting hot tea in these plastic bottles when they package them, or do they wait for the tea to cool before they package? I don't know. That definitely would make a difference, but even if it is just sitting there for 3 weeks in a plastic bottle, there is the risk that some of the plastics are coming out into your drink. So I always opt for the glass, and it is more expensive, but again, it's teaching our commercialism and consumerism type of culture where to pay attention. So, oils and fats. A lot of people have this misconception that eating things high in fat are going to encourage them to gain fat. And that is absolutely not the case. In fact, it's the opposite of that. A lot of people who are trying to lose a lot of weight at once will go on a high-fat diet, and they'll start shedding pounds because they're going low carb and they're getting all of this important nutrition that their organs need without the grains. So what does cause people to gain weight tends to be the excessive sugar and carb intake. When you have high blood sugars, your body goes into alert because this is a toxic state, and it actually starts sequestering or creating cholesterol and other sugars from the extra carbs and sugars, and that is more dangerous. The triglycerides formed from that are what tend to go into our adipose or fat tissue. But eating the egg yolk, if you eat eggs, I highly recommend you eat the egg yolk. It is rich in cholesterol and choline and a lot of important fatty nutrients that feed your brain and feed your heart. So eating the right fats lowers cholesterol, balances your hormones, and protects the heart and other organs, especially the brain. Your brain runs on fat. You need fat to think right. Pregnant women are supposed to be eating extra fats to build their babies' brains up. And we need fat in order to make our cholesterol backbones for all of the hormones that we have going on in our bodies. So if somebody's feeling depleted and they can't think straight, and then I find out they're on a low-fat diet, it's an easy fix. Within 2 weeks, they're feeling so much better because all they're doing is they were lacking that cholesterol backbone to synthesize the hormones that make them feel energized and young and ready to do their thing, and it's feeding their brain again. So MUFAs and PUFAs versus unsaturated or versus saturated fats. MUFAs and PUFAs are unsaturated fats. Those are generally better for you than the saturated fats. There are some saturated fats that are good for you. Most are plant-based. But monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids actually go into your cellular membranes in all the cells of your body and help them work better to be able to bring nutrients and important information into the cells, and also to let garbage and all the stuff that needs to leave the cell back out. When you have unsaturated fats, basically the cellular membrane is nice and fluid and it has room to move because it's unsaturated. So it's soft, it works with the proteins around it, and it can kind of hustle and bustle, open and close its doors and make things happen. When you have a diet rich in saturated fats, and that then goes into all of your cells and the cell membranes, you have stiff, brittle cell membranes. And when that happens, good stuff can't get in as easily, bad stuff can't get out. You get increased toxicity and decreased nutrient status in your cells, and that's very dangerous, and that does not make anybody feel good. So we want to make sure we are eating all of these rich unsaturated fats in order to help our bodies and our cellular signaling and all of those little processes that are very important for optimal health to be working and flowing. So some good things are avocado fats, nuts and seed fats, olive oil, canola oil if it's non-GMO. There's a lot of GMO canola oil out there, and that's a problem. It needs to be organic canola oil. Sesame oil and sunflower oil are particularly high in the MUFAs. And then for your PUFAs, you have safflower oil, salmon, trout, mackerel, herring, walnuts, and sunflower seeds. So our saturated fats, the bad guys in general, are animal-based, and that's found in red meat, dairy products, ice cream, butter. Now again, if these are grass-fed, it's kind of a different story, and you're getting some omega-3s and some unsaturated healthy fats in there. This is really talking about those grain conventional types of products. Plant-based saturated fats include coconut, palm kernel oil, cacao butter, and palm oil. Coconut oil is actually a pretty healthy saturated fat. It's still controversial. It's been controversial for years now. But the refined version of coconut oil has a very high heating point, so you can use it to cook without it basically going rancid because it's getting cooked too high. It's very protective in that way, and it does show some protection for your heart. The breakdown of these medium-chain triglycerides that coconut oil has actually turns into antiviral and antibacterial components as well. So there are benefits to the refined coconut oil. And I'm mentioning here omega-3 versus omega-6. Fish oil and flaxseed oil are high in omega-3. In general, animal products are higher in omega-6. In general as well, the standard American diet has a very high omega-6 intake to their omega-3s. And while we need some omega-6s, if the omega-3s aren't canceling them out, and basically 2 times more than what the omega-6s are, it's going to confer a more pro-inflammatory system, all of your tissues, which increases your risk of things like rheumatoid arthritis, any sort of inflammatory disorder. It will give you brain fog. You're not going to feel as vital as you can. And the best oils to cook with are ones that have that high heat point, like I mentioned. It's called a smoke point. When you start seeing, if you're like sauteing something on your stovetop and you start noticing there's smoke coming off, but there's no water in there, it's just oil. I've done this before because I'm multitasking or something. I throw that oil out, I wash the pan, I start over at a lower heat, because what I did is I basically burned the oil, and it's no longer protective or good for me, it's pro-inflammatory. So this happens when we bake things too, but we're not really paying attention, oh, is the oil smoking in there? But there are oils that have a higher heat point where you can put the oven on at 450 and it's okay, as opposed to others where if you're at 450, you're burning the oils off, they're becoming rancid, and it's not helpful for you anymore. So ghee is clarified butter. You can cook pretty high temperatures with that. Refined coconut oil as well. Extra virgin olive oil is a little controversial, but I have a former nutrition professor who specializes in the Mediterranean diet and nutrition, and she's a naturopathic physician as well. She strongly supports extra virgin olive oil as a cooking milieu, whether you're cooking on the stovetop or baking in your oven. And she's been with it for a long time, so I trust her on that. And one of her arguments is that in Italy, they've been cooking with olive oil that way for how long, and they have all the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, just like anybody else does. So it doesn't seem to be detrimental, so it's good to go. And there's a new oil nowadays called algae oil. It has very high heat cooking points, and it also is incredibly high in omega-3s, but also pretty expensive. With your food preparation, you want to make sure that you are optimizing the amount of nutrients, you're protecting it from any oxygen, oxidative damage is what it's called, and basically you want to preserve as much as you can from what you started with by picking it out of the ground or wherever. So your green light ways of cooking to preserve as much nutrients as possible without making any new dangerous chemicals in the process include steaming, boiling, and baking. You have to be careful if you're choosing to fry something, but especially if you're charring. Who's heard of the Maillard reaction? It's like a fancy cooking term. It makes delicious caramelization of things, but basically what happens is the way that it changes the chemical structure of whatever you're cooking, and it makes all that brown, yummy, crispy stuff or caramelly stuff. Those actually cause something called advanced glycosylated end products in our body, which makes proteins and things sticky, and it actually causes inflammation and you have an increased risk of an elevated hemoglobin A1C. It's like a really sticky sugar that hangs around. So as delicious as it is, I really try to make sure that I'm not browning too much my foods to help prevent that caramelization process. Dehydrating vegetables and fruits is a really great way to preserve nutrients. You're cooking long-term at a very low temperature, so you're preserving the vitamins in there. You don't want to be eating old devitalized foods if you can manage. I've definitely, left the kale in my fridge for way too long, or the bok choy, and it's getting kind of soft and soggy, and I cook it anyway because it's what I have. And you'll get fiber that way still, but you're not going to get all the vibrant nutrients that you need, and there's probably, again, some oxidative damage there, which when our body gets oxidatively damaged, what happens is proteins break down, we can get wrinkles, our organs aren't going to be as comfortable or happy. It's why we need antioxidants. It protects us from breaking down from that oxygen process. And then, of course, you want to get the freshest kinds of foods, which you'll find best by doing the local, in-season kind of farmer's market idea. But you can also choose foods that have been canned or frozen at the time of their peak nutrient value as well. That does preserve the nutrients pretty well. How are we doing so far? Okay. So Medscape put an article out, I think 2 weeks ago or so, that the best diets, according to the US, whoever meta-analysis guys are, is the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. The DASH diet is very similar to the Mediterranean diet. It's geared more towards people with hypertension, and the only difference is there's low salt and no alcohol in the DASH diet. But both of them are very rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. And this is the new food pyramid according to the Mediterranean diet. So, of course, they're reminding you to stay well hydrated, to stay active on the daily basis. You want to avoid salt for the most part and be replacing that with herbs. Herbs have a lot of different chemical compounds that are antioxidant, that are medicinal, that protect our bodies and actually give us more stamina. They have vitamins and minerals in them as well. But basically, the bottom of the pyramid, the base of your foods, should be more of the starchy cereals and grains. Potatoes are included in there, rice, quinoa, pasta, bread. And we'll talk about if you have food intolerances or anything, that's definitely something that needs to be modified in this for your sake. You want to have at least 6 servings of vegetables every day, including your fresh greens. You want to have 3 servings of fruit. If anybody's any close to this, when I first see them, usually it's opposite, or they're eating lots of good fruits, but they're not eating enough vegetables. So vegetables should be the predominant choice there. Olive oil is a big old slice of this pyramid, but you can replace that idea with any of the healthy fats that we talked about. And 2 servings a day of dairy products if your body can handle that, if that works for you. And again, you want those to be the grass-fed dairy products. And then so that's every single day you should be having those things. And then on a weekly basis, you want to have 5 to 6 servings of fish a week, 4 servings of poultry, 3 to 4 servings of olives or nuts, some potatoes, which actually they do also technically belong in the cereal department there. Eggs, 3 servings, and sweets, and that's desserts and refined sugars and all of that, 3 servings. And red meat should be actually less than that, in my opinion, but they're saying here 4 servings, yes, monthly, yes, once a week would be the right way to go about that. Okay, so the Mediterranean diet globally is a great anti-inflammatory preventive diet that reduces your risk of diabetes and heart disease. But if you want to go a little further to optimize your diet and basically, let's say that the Mediterranean diet is your regular fuel and your blood type diet is the premium fuel. The blood type diet is something that was created by Dr. Peter D'Adamo. He's a naturopath. And what it pays attention to is how different blood types take in and react to different foods in the bloodstream, but also in our guts. And this has to do with our genetics. This has to do with epigenetics, which is the kinds of things that can change. Like, we always have the same DNA, but it can always be read differently, and that can be for better or worse. Epigenetics is, okay, which of these chapters are we reading then? Are we reading the good ones, or are we reading the bad ones? And that's basically what then gets created into your body. So what the blood type diet does is it pays attention and says, okay, how can we manipulate those epigenetics to read only the good chapters and to keep this body flowing the best way it can? I'm sure that some of you have heard of the plant paradox or plant lectins. That's something that's very commonly marketed at this time. This is basically a foundational idea from the Diadamo diet. The Diadamo diet's much older, and it is more refined in that it allows you to eat these plants. It just depends on which ones you're allowed to eat based on your blood type. So we can influence your digestion, your metabolism, your immune system, your energy levels, and your genetic expression all through the blood type diet. And of course, always we're looking for changing those things for the better for you. And it is still whole foods based. It's just a different ratio of starches and cereals to vegetables and meats. And we basically give a list of, these are the types of vegetables that are excellent for your blood type. These are the types that are neutral, and these are the types that will harm you. Yes?
Are you talking about blood group typing, ABO?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So it makes a difference. In general, those with blood type A's tend to thrive more on a pescatarian or a vegetarian diet. Blood type O's tend to be better on a paleo type diet. I shouldn't even say that. They do need grains, but they do need a lot more meat than other blood types. And then you have an AB, which is like a happy medium in between. And B's have the most general, I think that they have the best diet. They actually have beer in their superfoods or something like that, and I'm always jealous they can have cheese and stuff. But it really does make a difference in the body's chemistry. So mood and timing. Digestion is not just something that our organs do by itself. Our minds have a huge influence on that, and vice versa. The gut-brain connection is something that is pretty phenomenal, and we're still figuring more stuff out about it, but we do know a lot already. And digestion is a cerebral event before it even is a physical event. When we're smelling good foods and, getting ready, thinking about what we want to eat, or we already know and we're just anticipating it to be put in front of our table, we feel already, the saliva going, we get the salivation, we feel our belly starting to churn, we're getting all revved up and ready to go before food even hits our mouth. This is the right way to do it, and even having a little aperitif beforehand or digestive bitters to even stimulate it further might be helpful to consider. And being in a calm mood helps, and we'll talk about that in a second. But when you're in this pre-prepped mode, you're going to secrete the right kinds of digestive enzymes. You're going to enjoy the foods on a different level than if you're running out the door and grabbing something to eat in the car because you're 10 minutes late to work. You're not going to absorb that food the same way. You're not going to push out the right amount of enzymes or get your stomach working the right way in order to properly digest that. So the vagus nerve is a big player in that it is in control of our parasympathetic rest and digest system. When we're happy and when we're calm, the vagus nerve gets stimulated. It lowers our breathing rate, it lowers our heart rate, it brings blood to our organs, and it really helps things get moving. When we're stressed or in fight or flight mode and the vagus nerve is shut off, our autonomic nervous system takes over, and that's really stressful. And the blood is actually shunted to our muscles instead of our organs. So we have these depleted, dry organs trying to macerate and absorb our food when the body's really paying attention to, oh my gosh, there's some kind of danger somewhere and we need to start running. So That will definitely cause gas and bloating in and of itself. You can have belly aches if you eat in that kind of state. And it does cause dysbiosis in your body because you're eating foods without getting properly digested, and that can bring extra bugs into the picture, but that can also just give you extra big proteins in your gut that feed the bugs there and cause extra fermentation, which is where you get that bloat. So let's see, gratitude to elevate our food experience. I'm sure that a lot of you pray before your meals, and that is an excellent practice to have to increase the frequency of your food and to align your intentions of, this is going to be good for me, this is excellent information for my body, and I'm very grateful to have this. Not only that, but eating together with your family or with your loved ones also influences how you react to foods. And this is on an immune system level just as much as it is on that vagus nerve rest and digest level. When you are a happy person eating with people you love, you tend to be less reactive in negative ways, period, even if you're eating chocolate cake that has, you know, like GMO whatever in it. You're better off eating it with a loved one than doing something like that, eating it by yourself. Digestion is also a circadian event. Not a lot of us feel like having dinner at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's a reason for that. We wake up, some of us are ready to eat, some of us aren't. It's really based on how our hormones are working for us, and sometimes it's helpful to fast in the morning. Sometimes it's really helpful to make sure you get your big food meal in there. So that's something that talking to a nutritionist or a naturopath can help you decide what the best schedule is for you. But one thing that is common across the board is nobody should go to bed with a big full stomach. You should have dinner that's rich in proteins and fibers to give you the sustenance to get you through the night. But you really want to make sure that your stomach, your actual stomach organ, is empty when you go to bed, because when you lie down, if you have food in your stomach, it can tend to come back up. You have more of a risk for GERD or heartburn. And it also gets a little more stagnant and sticks in your belly and ferments there instead of getting digested the right way. And when we're sleeping, we kind of want to be in a more fasting state, because instead of our body focusing on, okay, we need to break this stuff down, we need to bring this fat to the liver, we need to bring this vitamin over here, it's focused on any sort of infections or inflammation that need to be cleared from you. It actually helps you restore and revitalize yourself more if there's less digestion activity going on, and more so just a break for your body to recover from the day. By no means does that mean go to bed hungry, because that raises stress hormones too. So other factors, organ health. Do you have a gallbladder? Do you have an appendix? Do you have proper functioning in your stomach and your liver and everything? Is your pancreas healthy? Your stomach pH, this is something that's very much dictated by your blood type as well. Blood type A's tend to have the least amount of stomach acid. Blood type O's tend to have the most, and B is in between. A lot of the times, blood type A people will get GERD or heartburn and think it's because they have too much acid in their body, or the doctor does, and they give them a PPI, a protein pump inhibitor of some sort, to deal with it. But really, the reason that a blood type A person is having that heartburn is more likely the lack of stomach pH or the stomach acid. And if the pH is still too high, which means it's less acidic, it doesn't give a feedback mechanism to actually seal the stomach off from the esophagus to protect it from that acid. So even the most alkaline types of acids will splash up because it's nice and open, and you'll feel that, and it will be uncomfortable, and it will risk damage. But a lot of the time, what actually helps it and heals your digestion as well is taking more stomach acid to support that normal process. Your probiotic and gut flora balance has a big role in nutrients, period. If not for bugs, we wouldn't have a lot of our nutrients. We eat certain things that then get converted by the different bugs in our gut to different nutrients. And on top of that, we can have bugs that are making bad cholesterols or stimulating our body to make bad cholesterol because of the inflammation that they're causing. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And if you have a parasite or something, of course, they're competing for your nutrients at that point. So you're not going to be getting all of that yummy, expensive, well thought out food that you're eating. You're going to be feeding these very happy parasites instead. Food allergies, sensitivities, and intolerances should always be considered and addressed. Food allergies are different from food sensitivities in that allergies are an immediate response. It's a direct immune response. Sensitivities are hypersensitive reactions that is still a direct immune response, but it actually takes several days to show itself. So you could have pasta on Monday, but you're not going to feel the detrimental effects until somewhere between Thursday and Sunday, and you're not going to put it together that it was the pasta you had. Whereas if you get hives or a more direct response, it's very obvious and instantaneous. But both of them are affecting you on pretty serious levels. And intolerances are just you're lacking that enzyme. So you could be lactose intolerant and not have the lactase that's needed to just break down that sugar. And that's different. Nervous system integrity. We talked about the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic, rest and digest versus being stressed out and not having any blood flow to those organs. Some people are constantly in that fight or flight mode, and they're not going to absorb any nutrients the same way that they would if we could figure out how to kind of support that more vagus nerve activity for them. And of course, the emotional relationship between food and eating. So if you have food and you're like, this is bad for me, I'm so stressed out about this, you're kind of just like reiterating that and putting that into your subconscious and putting that into the food energy. And you're not going to feel as good as if you're grateful for what you're eating, even if sometimes it's not the most ideal thing and you're kind of stuck in wherever you are. Have gratitude for that food. Have a healthy relationship with the fact that we need this food to be sustained, to feel good, to keep on doing all the other things we care about in this life to be doing. And that is it. So if you need some additional support or you think that you would benefit from some individualized information, I would be happy to see you myself. My office is in Waterford, but all naturopathic physicians are highly trained in nutrition, and there are nutritional coaches out there that are excellent as well. Registered dietitians are not my favorite resource, to be honest with you, to learn about how to eat the right way. Any more questions? Yes?
You said that if you choose to use milk, which I do, that your milk of choice should be whole milk
and grass-fed.
Is there anything inherently wrong with skim? Because I really don't like the taste of whole.
So the skim milk, you're basically getting all of the inflammatory proteins and none of the anti-inflammatory balancing fats in there that are giving you the nutrient value that you need. So skim milk is I don't want to say this in a negative way, but it is kind of just like inflammatory water. If you are getting organic and grass-fed skim milk, that's different. You're still not going to get as much of the anti-inflammatory balance because most of that comes from the omega-3s, the conjugated linoleic acid that's found in the grass-fed fat. So I would suggest to try a 2% or a 1% and kind of just
Don't like that.
well, then organic would be, yeah, this is what we have to, sometimes it's a compromise.
I do organic. That's
Yes.
something I do, but yeah, I just don't like the whole.
Yeah. Yes.
What about alkaline water?
So that can actually disrupt the stomach's ability to acidify in order to break down different foods and kill. Basically, our stomach is our first sterilization process. If we don't have acid there, bacteria can live on and kind of colonize in our gut in a different way than they would if those pathogenic things got killed off in our stomach. So when you drink alkaline water, it's throwing that off. If you eat a heavy meat diet and you feel like you're in acidosis, it might benefit, but it is actually pretty controversial to try and affect your pH in any sort of manipulation technique that way, because our body is very much regulated as far as pH goes. You can't do much to change the pH in your blood. You can't do much to change the pH in your saliva outside of just eating the whole foods. I would not manipulate it further than that. Yes?
Yeah, do you recommend taking a probiotic?
I do. Unless you can eat fermented foods on a daily basis, probiotics would be important for you to have. The other factor is they tend to get into your intestine better because it's usually enterically coated, so it's protected from that stomach acid. Was there another question back here? Yeah.
Yes. What type of water filtration system would you use for well water? I have well water.
The same. I'm in Stonington. I have well water, and I use a Berkey filter. The Berkey filter. Yep, B-E-R-K-E-Y.
Is it on the list here?
It is on the list there, yes. Any more questions?
What did you say about palm oil? I mean, when we read the labels on products, if it says palm oil, we usually don't try it.
Yes, there are a few reasons that you would want to avoid palm oil, and one of them is that moral, environmental idea, because palm oil, basically forests are being destroyed in order for us to harvest that palm oil. So if you choose to buy palm oil, what I recommend is you look for ones that claim to be sustainably sourced.
You're saying just palm oil, not an ingredient in a food product, you know, how that you read the ingredient?
Right. I'm saying any palm oil. So I picked up a Dr. Braun, who knows a Dr. Bronner's soaps? I picked up one of those the other day, and I was reading the ingredients, and they had palm oil in there, and I was so disappointed, and I put it back on the shelf because it did not mention that it was sustainably sourced. So it's not just in our food, but any little ingredient of palm oil, you have that risk. But it is, where is it? It's in here, right? I mentioned it, did I? Yeah, here we go. It's a plant-based saturated fat. So it's not as dangerous as the animal-based saturated fats, but it is something that you want in very small doses and just occasionally. Yes. Yep.
Can you substitute the almond milk for dairy, the unsweetened almond milk?
Can you substitute unsweetened
Use almond milk instead
for anything, you mean?
for dairy.
Yeah. I prefer to make my own nut butters, but that took me years to get to, as far as, you know, this is a step-by-step thing. I don't want anybody to feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of information here, but really if you made like 1 or 2 changes a month, in a year your kitchen is going to be entirely different than what it is now, and so will your body. But yes, almond milk is fine. I'm often disappointed with the extra stuff that they put in. Almond oil, you can buy at Stop and Shop and things like that. So I soak almonds or walnuts or pecans, whatever I have, in water overnight, filtered water. I strain it, I put more water in there, stick it in my blender, and I buzz it around for like 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. I'll add some maple syrup, and if I'm making a big batch, I'll put a capsule of vitamin E in there, and then you have your own milk. You just got to strain it. And I think it's way more delicious than the almond milk you can get at the store, and you know exactly what's in there. Yes?
Just comment on what you said about changing a couple things a little at a time. That's what I've been doing.
Awesome.
One thing I found is I'm much calmer. I don't have the anxiety I used to have. And that's been a big change, especially in our society, because I'm a counselor. And I see people, you know, rushing from here to there and everywhere.
Yep.
They don't take the time to digest their food properly.
Absolutely.
Rather than say, oh, I have to make all these changes, which is what I've heard before, 1 or 2 at a time, it does make a big difference.
It adds up for sure. Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you're doing that for yourself. That's awesome. It's going to make you a better counselor to be calm too. Yeah. Yes?
Is there a particular brand of probiotics that you would recommend? Because there's so many on the market.
There are a few brands that I really like. I'll list 4 for you. Claire Labs.
Clear.
Claire, K-L-A-I-R-E. Claire Labs. Metagenics, M-E-T-A-G-E-N-I-C-S. Orthomolecular. And Kirkman. K-I-R-K, man. Yes?
If you're going to take a probiotic, is there an optimal time to take it? I mean, with food, without food?
In general, I ask people to take it on an empty stomach either before bed or when they first get up. But the more important thing is that you're getting it in on a daily basis. There doesn't seem to be a huge difference.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? All right, awesome. My pleasure, my pleasure.